Imagine a person who has not moved their hand in years. Their body is there, their intention is there, their desire is there, but the pathway between will and world has been broken. Then a system begins to listen. Tiny patterns of neural activity are recorded. A machine learns to associate those patterns with intended movement. A cursor moves, a letter appears, a digital hand responds, a sentence forms, and suddenly the question is not only technological, it is intimate. Because if a machine can carry your intention into the world, where does your body end? If a device can translate neural activity into action, is it still just a tool? If your thoughts can become data, what part of you must remain untouchable? This is the threshold of brain-computer interfaces. Not because they are magic, not because they are about to turn everyone into a superhuman tomorrow morning. They are not. Because they touch one of the most ancient boundaries of human existence, the boundary between the inner world and the outer world, the private intention, the moving body, the self. A brain-computer interface, or BCI, is essentially a system that records signals from the nervous system, interprets them, and uses them to control something outside the body. A cursor, a keyboard, a robotic limb, a speech system, maybe one day more complex devices. At the simplest level, it is a bridge, but it is not a bridge between two ordinary places. It is a bridge between intention and machine, between neural activity and external action, between the silent interior of a person and the visible world. That is why BCIs must not be treated as another futuristic gadget. A phone is outside you, a laptop is outside you, even a prosthetic limb begins as something outside you, although the brain can gradually absorb it into the map of the body. But a brain-computer interface enters a more dangerous and more sacred space. It does not merely sit in your hand, it listens closer to the source of agency, and in some cases, it may eventually write back. This is where Metanthropy begins, not with excitement, not with fear, but with the human limit. The first and most morally obvious promise of BCIs is not enhancement, it is restoration. A person with paralysis may still have the intention to move, but the body cannot complete the command. A person with ALS may still have thoughts, memories, humor, love, anger, dignity, but the muscles needed for speech may fail. A person may be mentally present and socially trapped inside a body that no longer gives them enough access to the world. In that context, a BCI is not a toy. It is not a rich person's upgrade. It is a possible return of agency, a way for a person to say, I am still here, I still choose, I still answer, I still act. That must remain the moral center of the topic. Before we talk about superintelligence, gaming, military applications, productivity, or enhancement, we have to begin with the person who cannot speak to their child, the person who cannot move a cursor, the person whose mind is alive, but whose body has become a locked door. For them, the boundary of self has already been wounded. The BCI does not violate the self by crossing that boundary. It may help repair the bridge between self and world, but once a technology can restore, it can also enhance. And once it can enhance, markets arrive, status arrives, competition arrives, predation arrives. That is why the question cannot remain medical for long. Today, most serious BCI work is still limited, experimental, and focused on therapeutic use. We are not living in a world where corporations can casually read your private thoughts with perfect accuracy. The brain is not a clean text file. Neural signals are noisy, context-dependent, embodied, trained, interpreted. A BCI does not simply open the skull and reveal the soul. That kind of hype is dangerous because it makes the technology look more mature than it is. The opposite mistake is also dangerous because immature does not mean irrelevant. A crude telescope is still the beginning of astronomy. A crude neural interface may still be the beginning of a new relationship between mind and machine, so we need better language. A BCI is not mind reading in the mystical sense. It is pattern interpretation. The system records neural activity. Algorithms try to infer what the person intends. The person learns the system, and the system learns the person. Over time, control may improve. This is not a one-way command from soul to machine. It is a loop, brain, decoder, vice, feedback, adjustment. The human adapts to the machine adapts to the human, and this loop is where the boundary of self begins to blur. Think about a blind person using a cane. At first, the cane is an object, but with practice, it becomes something more than an object. The person does not merely feel the cane, they feel the world through the cane. The tool becomes incorporated into perception. Or think about driving a car. A skilled driver does not consciously calculate every centimeter of the vehicle. The car becomes temporarily included in the body schema. You feel whether you can pass through a gap. You sense the edge of the vehicle almost as if it were your own edge. Human beings have always extended themselves through tools. The spear extends the arm. The book extends memory. The phone extends communication. The camera extends vision. The city extends cooperation. So in one sense, BCIs are not an absolute rupture. They are part of a long human story, the self reaching beyond the skin. They are different in degree, intimacy, and risk, because with a BCI, the tool does not only respond to the hand, it responds to patterns closer to intention itself. And if the system becomes bidirectional, if it not only reads from the nervous system but stimulates it, then the loop becomes even deeper. Now the machine is not only receiving, it is influencing. A prosthetic hand with sensory feedback could let someone feel touch again. That is beautiful. Neurostimulation system could help regulate symptoms of disease. That can be profoundly humane, but a system that modifies mood, attention, desire, memory, or perception also raises the hardest question: when does assistance become authorship? The device helps me move, I am grateful. If it helps me focus, I may feel empowered. If it shapes what I notice, what I want, what I remember, what I emotionally tolerate, how much of the choosing is still mine? This is not an argument against neurotechnology, it is an argument against childish thinking. The future of the mind cannot be governed by slogans. Upgrade everyone is not enough. Ban everything is not enough. Let the market decide is not enough, because the market did not protect attention when attention became profitable. The market did not become gentle when screens became addictive. So why should we assume the market will become wise when the nervous system becomes interface? There may be the darkest possibility around BCIs, not that someone will instantly read your secret thoughts like subtitles in a movie. The darker possibility is more ordinary. Your neural data becomes valuable, your attention becomes measurable, your emotional state becomes inferable, your fatigue, stress, engagement, hesitation, arousal, confusion, and compliance become signals, and once signals become measurable, someone will try to optimize them. An employer may want productivity, an insurer may want risk prediction, a platform may want engagement, a government may want security, a school may want performance, military may want reaction speed, a clinic may want healing, a corporation may want dependence. Same interface that can restore agency to a paralyzed person could, in another context, become a tunnel through which institutions enter the last private territory. This is why neuroprivacy may become one of the defining human rights questions of the future. Not because every BCI is evil, not because every researcher is reckless, but because brain data is not ordinary data. It is not just data about what you clicked. It is not just data about where you went. It may become data about the conditions under which you intend, decide, attend, feel, and respond. It is data from the borderland of personhood, and if we cross that border without governance, we should not pretend to be surprised when power follows us inside. But there is another danger too. Not only surveillance, inequality. If BCIs remain therapeutic, the ethical task is access, safety, dignity, consent, and long-term care. Who receives the implant? Who pays for it? Who maintains it? What happens if the company fails? What happens if software support ends? What happens when the device in your skull becomes obsolete? A pacemaker failing is already serious. A neural interface abandoned by a company would be a new category of dependency. But if BCIs move from therapy to enhancement, the inequality problem becomes sharper. Imagine students with attention-enhancing neural systems competing against students without them. Workers with cognitive interfaces competing against workers who cannot afford them. Soldiers enhanced for reaction time. Executives using neural analytics to make faster decisions. Children pressured into cognitive optimization because everyone else is doing it. At that point, the BCI is no longer only a bridge for the disabled. It becomes a gate into a new hierarchy, the enhanced mind and the unenhanced mind, the protected inner life and the exploited inner life, the upgraded class and everyone else. This is the Metanthropy warning. Enhancement without justice becomes stratification. And stratification at the level of the brain would not be ordinary inequality. It would be inequality entering cognition itself. Still, we must be careful. There is a cheap, romantic argument that says the natural mind is sacred, leave it untouched. But the natural mind is not always gentle. The natural mind can be trapped in depression, addiction, trauma, compulsion, dementia, paralysis, pain, fear. Nature is not morality. The fact that a condition is biological does not make it sacred. The fact that a limitation is inherited does not make it wise. So the answer is not to worship the unmodified brain. The answer is to ask what must be protected as the brain becomes more modifiable. And here, the boundary of self is not a wall. It is more like a living membrane. The self has always been shaped by language, family, culture, memory, tools, injury, love, grief, education and technology. You are not a sealed object. You are a pattern of embodied agency moving through relationships and time. So the question is not, can technology touch the self? Technology already touches the self. The question is, under what conditions does that touch become healing? And under what conditions does it become invasion? A BCI that restores communication to someone who has lost speech may deepen the self. A BCI that lets someone control a prosthetic limb may expand the self. A BCI that helps regulate unbearable symptoms may protect the self. But a BCI designed to extract attention, manipulate desire, rank cognition, or monetize neural vulnerability would not expand the self, it would colonize it. That is the line. Not natural versus artificial, not biology versus technology, but agency versus extraction, dignity versus control, compassion versus predation. BCIs force us to stop thinking of the human being as a simple biological object. They show us that the body is not merely flesh. The body is access, the body is expression, the body is the means by which the inner life becomes visible to others. When that access is broken, technology can be mercy, but they also show us that the mind is not merely computation. Mind is not just signals waiting to be decoded. It is privacy, meaning, vulnerability, story, attention, desire, memory, and moral agency. So we need a civilization mature enough to hold both truths. The brain is biological machinery, but the person is not just hardware. The mind can interface with machines, but the self is not just software. The future may give us tools that restore speech, movement, sensation, memory, and perhaps one day forms of cognitive capacity we can barely imagine. Good, let us not be cowards before healing. Let us not confuse suffering with wisdom. Let us not tell the paralyzed person that the broken bridge is sacred, but let us also refuse the childish mythology that every new power automatically progress. A brain-computer interface is a threshold. At its best, it says to the wounded person, your agency still matters. At its worst, it says to the market, the last private territory is open for business. And that is why the boundary of self must become a moral frontier before it becomes a commercial frontier. The future question is not only whether machines can connect to brains. They can. The deeper question is whether compassion, law, wisdom, and human dignity can connect to power before power connects to everything else. Because the goal is not to become more machine. The goal is to become more able, more free, more compassionate, more present, without becoming less ourselves. That is the Metanthropy standard. Not purity, not fear, not worship. The standard is this: restore what suffering has stolen, protect what power would exploit. And if we enter the mind, enter it with reverence, because the brain may become the last private territory, and the self is not a gadget.